Well, we're joined now by Conservative MP for the Cotswolds, Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown. Hi, Geoffrey. Ben Habib there, good friend of mine, of course, saying what these two by-elections have proven when it comes to Reform UK is not so much that we're going to go and win the general election, but that we can embed ourselves firmly inside the psyche of the nation. I mean, a brand that got 1% in a by-election a year ago is now regularly polling in double figures and has concretised that with these two performances. That must surely send a shiver up Conservative spines.
Well, if you look at the figures in these by-elections, they were certainly bad for the Conservatives. I wouldn't in any way attempt to try and spin that in any other way. But actually, if you look at the figures, these are very low turnouts in the low, high 30s, whereas a general election, they're likely to be nearly double that. Actually, what you see is that the Labour vote has hardly increased at all in Wellingborough, 100 odd, but actually in Kingswood, it's declined by 5,000. And so what you're seeing is, I think, is a lot of Conservatives staying at home and Labour, no great enthusiasm for voting Labour. I think come the general election, once we've had a bit more narrative, as Charlie has said, a conversation with the electorate, we've had a budget, I think in a general election, I think things could be significantly different.
Hi, Geoffrey. Good to have you on board. Jacob Rees-Mogg has come out today saying the problem is essentially the Tories haven't been Tory enough, and one of the things he's suggested is this addiction to what I always call green claptrap has been a massive problem, that the Tories have spent so much time pursuing policies, environmental policies that only serve to make people colder and poorer. I would suggest that at this point it's time to get tough and to start looking at some of these policies that I just think are Labour or Lib Dem, and to start jettisoning them, get rid of them. You know, what this carbon net zero by 2050, no one knows what it means. They just know it makes them colder and poorer. Time to get real and start being more Tory.
Well, I agree with you over a lot of that. I think we do need to see a more Conservative Party policy on the economy. We need to see inflation coming down. We need to see tax cuts in the budget. On immigration, we need to see the Rwanda bill going through. And on the NHS, we need to try and get past this industrial action and try and get the waiting list down. So I agree with Jacob. We do need to see more pure Conservative policies. And I think if we can get that between now and the election, we will do substantially better than these by-election results.
But can I just ask you, Geoffrey, you know, given Rishi Sunak's track record, I mean, do you have confidence that the Tories will do that? Because I don't.
Well, I think the first real big milestone will be the budget. And we've got less than a month to wait for that. When we see that, we'll then see how the Conservatives will shape their policy in the run-up to the next election. So I'm not going to make any predictions as to what policies we're likely to see between now and the next election. But I can assure you that Rishi has a plan, and we will see that plan rolled out in the next few months. And I say, what I think is really striking about these by-elections is there is no great enthusiasm for voting Labour. And that is remarkable when you consider the party is the Conservative Party is in quite considerable turmoil. If there's no great enthusiasm for voting Labour, what is going to happen at the next election?
Yeah, I don't think you should be dining out on that one, because essentially no one likes Labour and they seem to like you even less. But what I would say is this, you know, Boris got that massive 80-seat majority off the back of essentially being handed on a plate an 80-seat majority by Nigel Farage standing down all of his candidates and winning it on the back of promising Brexit. We've since then had two prime ministers. That last leadership contest was like some sort of Margaret Thatcher cosplay competition. And so we've heard repeatedly that the Conservatives are going to be, well, Conservative, and yet we all sit waiting for some sort of evidence that this is happening. And you talk about the economy, which Conservatives always do when it comes up to an election. Well, you know, things are safer under us. What we've learned today is this hope or this aspiration to cut taxes, frankly, by 2%, the lowest band of income tax rate, is frankly not going to happen because there's not the economic headroom and we've slipped into recession.
So, I mean, it's very easy to talk things down, isn't it? But inflation is coming down. We've got almost a record number of people ever in work, certainly a record number of youngsters than ever before in work. So there are some good bright spots on the economy. And I think, as we had the conversation, as Charlie was making out, with the electorate between now and then the next election, which is probably 6 months off, I think we'll have a much clearer idea that the Conservative voters will have more enthusiasm to come out and vote. This was a by-election. A lot of Conservative voters are not happy. We know that. And there was no enthusiasm for them to come out and vote. But I think come a general election, they'll know that they will be either voting for or allowing a Labour government to get in, or they need to come out and vote Conservative. And I think that will be a very different story at a general election.
Geoffrey, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and we wish you well. Best of luck. God knows you're going to need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Still with us in the studio is Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. What did you make of that? I mean, you know, they're doing their best, but it is true. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. You know, the Tories are in a disastrous position, but as Alex has been laying out, and as Sir Geoffrey just did, there are sort of green shoots of core reasons for optimism, aren't there?
Was I laying that out?
Yeah, no, I'm
Maybe
just trying to get a discussion going. No, forget it. Forget it.
What did you say? Go through it again. I think, I mean, this is the thing, is that the Tories are doing sort of generationally bad, actually, at this general election. But as we've just discussed, the Labour Party doesn't really have much of a plan. And when it comes up with plans, it U-turns on it very quick. I have to say, I don't think there's much hope for Sir Keir Starmer. He's not going to win. For Rishi Sunak. He's not going to win the next general election. But there isn't much hope beyond that for Sir Keir Starmer, because there isn't that kind of bravery, if you like. There isn't that kind of vision. I don't think the electorate, given the economic state, given the social conditions of the UK at the moment, I don't think the British electorate are going to give Sir Keir Starmer 14 years to turn things around. I think he'll get one parliament. And if after 1 year things are not seen to be trending in an upwards direction, I think things within the Labour Party could get pretty ugly pretty fast. They'll have a very large majority, but within that, as we've seen throughout Starmer's period in time, you will get the factionalism, you will get the hard left playing up, you will get the Europhiles trying to say, maybe this is our chance to perhaps reopen that old wound whilst we've got this majority now about closer ties with the European Union. It'll, the knives will come out, much as they have with the Tories. And as I say, there isn't going to be that same amount of patience. If the Tories can get themselves together in that period of rebuilding, I don't think it's sort of all over for the Tories, unless, of course, Reform managed to, massively pull up on what they are. But I just don't see that happening fast enough yet. I don't see a reason for that to happen.
I mean, what I think is so sad here is looking at when you drill down into the figures, turnout and all the rest of it, is the fact that, it's sad, really, that in the United Kingdom, people feel straitjacketed by this faux binary between having to pick between a party that's proven themselves to be totally useless and a party that nobody wants or nobody thinks can do any better.
Yeah, but the extension of that is that none of the insurgent parties or third parties are quite hitting the message yet. Reform, I know that you're all in favour of them.
Is that not
they are growing in the right direction,
but
they're not there yet.
People think they've imbibed the sort of adage for so long that it has to be either Conservatives or Labour, so spending your vote on anything other than one of those two is a wasted vote. And people have just swallowed that and believe it.
Yeah, old habits certainly die hard. But actually, I'm not even talking so much about the Reform, because we've yet to see what they're going to end up doing. I'm as much thinking about the Green Party here, which stays stubbornly on a solitary MP. But we're told that environmentalism, that sort of brand of left-wing green politics, is very popular amongst an entire generation of people. It is stubbornly unable to get over that kind of threshold. The Liberal Democrats, who have always set themselves up as the third option, even now, when nobody's enthused about either party, they aren't doing particularly well either. There aren't alternatives. So it is very difficult right now, and I think that British politics in general is in a bit of a funk. But that's why I say, if the Tories, once they've had this clean-out, and they will have a clean-out enforced upon them, because that many MPs are probably going to lose their seats, if they can actually get themselves together and come up with a suitable leader and an ideology and a plan of sort, and they're able to sort of clean house, I don't think it's all over for them. People are talking about the party being over. I don't think it's over yet. The Labour Party, I think, is going to struggle for the next 5 years because it's scared of its own shadow, and it understands that its economic policies are not the route out of the disaster that it'll find itself in.
By the way, I mean, by-elections are never an indicator of what's going to happen in the general election, but if you do extrapolate the results in Wellingborough and Kingswood to a national basis, if it was the same kind of swing, the Tories will get 8 seats at the next election. So they'll be hoping for better than that.
That would be a real clear-out, wouldn't it? unprecedented.
Now, your texts and tweets have been coming in this lunchtime. We were asking, are the Tories now facing inevitable annihilation at the general election? Or is there any way back for Rishi? Sandy says there's a way back for the Tories, but not with Rishi. If they ditch him pronto and install someone like Braverman and let her implement her vision and the Tory manifesto, the manifesto the Tories were elected on, they could still turn things around. That'll be the day. Andy says they're gone and they know it. They've turned the country into a depressing cesspit. Well, you know.
Well,
now tell us
moving
what you really
on. Meanwhile, Matt says Rishi was a big mistake, a mistake that was never corrected. That's why they will be swept away. And Bert adds, it's over. The longer they cling to power, the more they will drag our country down. It is time to minimise their losses and change their leader for someone more palatable.
Oh, Rishi. I don't mind Rishi, actually. I think it's the rest of them that are dreadful.